All right, so this class is buyer consultation, and in my opinion, this is a very important class. The reason being is not because so much of the consultation that you're actually going to have with the clients, but the preparation necessary in order to have the buyer consultation. So, first and foremost, the purpose of a buyer consultation is to make sure your buyer is good and ready to go so they can actually purchase a home, right? But then also walking them through a little bit of the process. So what are some things that they're going to come up against? So it's an opportunity to sit them down and for you to get more clear on exactly what are their goals and aspirations, like why are they looking to buy a house? Getting them set up so that they can buy, and then educating them just a little bit on the process. So the purpose of a buyer consultation is not to make your buyer an expert on how to buy a house, yet it's just to plant some of the important seeds about the process so that as you're showing them houses and as you write an offer and you get an offer accepted and going through the process, then telling them about the process isn't such a surprise. Like they've heard this before and now you're just reminding them, okay? So it's really just to kind of warm them up to the process and educate them a little bit. So first and foremost, when you set up an appointment to have a buyer consultation, so here's basically the rundown. And by the way, we're going to go over some guidelines, and these sheets are on the intranet. So there's a guideline for your buyer consultation, so talking points, and then the other download is actually like script what to say. So here's the framework, and here's what to say with each of those pieces. So don't necessarily take notes on what to say because that's already in here. Just you want to memorize the essence of why you're even having a buyer consultation. Make sense?
Is that packet on the internet?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a guideline,
Yep.
and I recommend you have a buyer book with all these points, because then as you're talking with your client, you can check those off. Or you can even have them initial these. That way, as you're going through the buying process, so you take them to show a house, write an offer, it gets accepted, you're doing the inspections, you have the appraisal, they're going through the loan process, and something comes up, they're like, oh, well, you didn't tell me about that. Well, it's right here, we had that conversation, remember? Oh, right, okay? So as you're walking through the actual buying process, that's all a reminder because you've educated them up front. So, to rewind from the complete beginning, okay, when you're on the phone with a prospective borrower and you set up a buyer consultation, between the time of that phone conversation, your buyer consultation, you want them to get pre-qualified. So the conversation is going to go a little like this. You set the appointment. Okay, so we're going to have the consultation Saturday at 9 a.m. Great. So before that happens, I'm going to have my loan officer reach out to you and get your pre-qualification handled. That way, when you come in for the consultation, we're going to go over a few things. We're also going to pull up your search in the MLS, go over all your criteria, and see what results are there. And then we're going to go look at some houses. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what they want to do?
Yeah.
They just want to go see some houses. They don't want to go to a class. They don't want to do all this stuff. They want to get in the car, go look at houses, and buy a house, right? However, we're going to guide them through this process. So the buyer consultation is to sit down, go over their goals and objectives, educate them a little bit on the process, pull up their search criteria in the MLS so they can see what's actually out there, and that way you can make adjustments on their search criteria based on the results, okay? And then you're going to go show them some houses. So in order to go show them houses, you need a pre-qual, yes?
Yeah.
I mean, technically you don't need it, but why would you put them in your car if you don't even know that they can qualify for a loan? Like you could waste a whole day showing houses to someone that can't buy a house. Is that intelligent business practice? No. Okay, so today is Thursday, for example. So I'm on the phone with Nick, my potential client. Hey Nick, it's Justin. Yeah, okay, so I've got some time Saturday morning at 9. Does that work for you to go over kind of a consultation process and go look at houses?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So here's what I need to have happen. I'm going to have my loan officer give you a call today. What's a good time?
2.
Fantastic. So-and-so will call you today just by 2 or shortly thereafter, and I'm going to need you to get that loan officer everything they need so we can get your pre-qualification handled. Bring that with you on Saturday. That way, when we find you the right house, you are ready and prepared to write an offer. Does this make sense to you?
Yes.
You say yes. Great. Fantastic. So call your loan officer, let them know what's going on. Hey, I'm showing them houses Saturday. They've got to get pre-qualified. They're fully aware of this. Can you call them today by 2 o'clock? And your loan officer will say, yes. Because if not, then you pass them to a different loan officer, right? Like, this needs to run systematically. Make sense? Okay. None of this is rocket science. It's all pretty common sense stuff. just so long as you're getting your ducks in order and you're following a certain procedure, okay? Okay, so make sure they got their pre-qual before your buyer consultation. Otherwise, your consultation is just to educate them and set them up on an MLS search. You could do that over the phone. Like the real objective is to go show them houses so you can write an offer, right?
Right.
Okay, so we got to be prepared to write an offer. Otherwise, there's no sense in getting together. Does this make sense? I mean, unless you like wasting your time, right? So if you're going to meet them to go show them houses, make sure they're prepared. So if today's Thursday, loan officer's calling at 2, what I want to do is follow up by 5 p.m. and make sure everything's on track. And then Friday, did they get their docs to the loan officer? So I know we're getting a pre-qual by Saturday. Otherwise, there's no sense for us to meet. We might as well rebook that appointment. Because you're not going to go look at houses without the pre-qual. Yes? Okay. All right, so it's Saturday morning. We've got our consultation. Let's kind of go over what some of this looks like. First and foremost, there's a questionnaire that's on the intranet. And it's just some basic things. So tell me again what you're looking for. What I heard you say over the phone was you wanted 4 bedrooms, single level, yada, 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 yada. Right? All very basic, simple things. However, you want to start inspecting. Tell me about why you want 4 bedrooms. Why is that important to you? Well, because we've got kids and I need a home office. Oh, okay. So you need a home office and you're going to use a 4th bedroom, is that? Is that what I'm understanding? Yeah. Great. So would a 3-bedroom and a den work for you? The only difference is it has a dedicated closet and a den. Would that suffice as your home office? Could that work? If that's a yes, does that open up more potential properties? Yeah. So we want to find all options possible that meet their actual needs. So if you're just taking their information that they want single level, why? Well, because my mother-in-law is going to live with us and she can't go up and downstairs. Okay, great. Now I know there's no sense in going 2-story. I'm not even going to bring it up because I'm inspecting what they're telling me. I'm finding out the significance behind what they say they want. This is going to help you tremendously. Like if you get nothing else from this buyer consultation class, let it be this. Inspect what they say is important to them. And it's your job to find out why is that important. Here's why. If you've worked with any amount of buyers, if you haven't experienced this, you will. You set them up on an MLS search, send them all the properties that match that criteria that they gave you. Yes? Inevitably, a couple days later, you're going to get some text messages or some emails or some phone calls. Hey, I found this house on Zillow. And you're like, oh, here we go. It's either not available for sale or whatever the case is, and they're going to ask you, how come this didn't come up on my search? Well, the property you just sent me is a 2-story and you said single level only. That's why. So, part of the conversation you want to have with these people during the consultation before you even get into the process is boiler point number 2. Let me talk to you a little bit about the MLS versus other real estate websites. Because yes, you can go to Zillow, you can go to Trulia, Realtor.com, Homes.com, like you name it. There's hundreds of them out there, right? Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, here's how this works. When you go online to Zillow or any of those websites are pulling the data from our MLS, which means it's probably not up to date because they're going to sweep the MLS on a certain consistent basis, but we don't know what that is. So, if you're finding properties on sites other than the MLS, the information may not be accurate as to the availability of the home, and it may not match your search criteria. That's why I didn't email it to you through the MLS. And if that's the case, we need to have a conversation about what your criteria is, why is that important, so that I make sure I get it right from the get-go. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the search that we're going to set up on the MLS is going to be live information. Meaning, when an agent goes in and changes some listing information, let's say we set your price to max of $350, and then all of a sudden a property at $365 drops to $350. It's automatically going to email you once a day with all new properties that match your criteria. So you're always going to get the updated information, so long as it matches the criteria you gave me. So if you want up-to-date, accurate information, it's going to be through my listings, not the ones you're finding online. This makes sense, right? So you can go look out there, but just know, it's not that I'm hiding anything from you, it's that it didn't match the criteria, or it's really not available, but it's showing that it is active, available for sale online. Does this make sense? Okay? So you're going to get the live, up-to-date information from me and me alone. Those other sites are getting it from the MLS. I'm giving it to you straight from the MLS. So it's going to be up to date, okay? So that's a great time to pull up the MLS, put in their criteria, inspect their criteria. Tell me why is a 4-bedroom important to you? You want a large yard? Why is that important to you? How large of a yard are you talking? Like, don't use your own definition, right? Pool, no pool, why does it matter? Single level, 2-story, why? Right? It needs to be in a certain area, why? Like, you want to just be like a 5-year-old with curiosity on these things. You must understand what they're looking for. Because the more you understand what they're looking for and their motivations why they're buying, the easier it's going to be to find them what they're looking for. But if you just take what they say at face value and you go look for that, I guarantee you they're probably going to buy something else. Because a lot of times they really don't even understand what they're looking for. Trust me on this. So the more professional you can be in your standards to inspect their motivations so that you completely understand, the more time it's going to save you and you're going to get them to their end goal faster. If they get to buy a house faster that they're totally thrilled with, might they send you more referrals? Might they write you a good review on Zillow and Trulia? Yes, and all of those things help you get more business. So be a professional, have a standard to inspect their motivations. Okay? All right. So the buyer advisory, and by the way, I strongly recommend you put together a buyer consultation book with these items based on this list so you can actually show them. Okay? I know we have some at the surprise office. So let's talk about buyer advisory. First and foremost, like, by the way, on these forms, like, you don't need to go line by line and explain this stuff. There's quick little blurbs on here. In fact, the buyer advisory is very simple. This is a packet of information that you can use to find resources to any questions you may have regarding the property or the surrounding area. I just need you to sign the last page here, showing that I actually gave you one. I'm required by law to make sure you have this advisory. It's just a wonderful packet of great resources. Sign here. Boom, you keep that page, they get to keep the rest of it. End of conversation, okay? You can go a little deeper into what a buyer advisory is. Like, there's resources to check for sex offenders or environmental problems, things of that nature. Like, most people aren't going to do anything with it, but we're still required to get it and get a signature that they actually received it.
So for the file, like when we send paperwork to a TC or just, to Lori for the file, on the buyer advisory, all we need is the last page?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, if you're going to have initial every page, you can do that, but
Okay.
we definitely need the last page signed that they received the packet. Yep. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the contract. So that's a good time to have a contract pulled out so they can actually see. Let's talk a little bit about this. First thing on the contract is price. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what I want you to know is that the list price of the property is not necessarily market value. So, a lot of buyers want to offer less than list price, right? And in some situations that makes sense. Especially if the house is worth $275, but they're asking $300. Well, of course we're going to offer less than list price because it's overpriced, right? So what I want you to know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is that before we write an offer, we're going to pull some comparables and we're going to see how this property is priced. Is it priced well or not so good? Because I'll tell you, even if you want to get your offer accepted at a price less than list price, that's not going to work if the house is worth $275 and they're priced at $250. Like, you might need to edit that. No, shit, okay. Yeah, edit that shit
Well, now
out.
I gotta edit.
Yeah, right? My bad. Okay, so if the property is worth $275, but it's currently priced at $250, do you think you're going to be able to write an offer for less than $250?
Probably not.
No, because it's going to draw so much attention that it's underpriced. Because buyers that are not finding what they're looking for in that area, they've looked at a lot of houses. So buyers start to become aware and cognizant of what the values actually are in that immediate market area. So they see this property come up at $250, and they're like, oh my gosh, all the ones we've been looking at are not as good as this one, and they're priced higher. They're instantly going to see value. So it's going to draw a lot of attention from buyers. So your buyer comes in with an offer of, let's say it's $250, which is their list price, and it's worth $275, and now your buyer wants to ask for closing cost concessions, what's the likelihood you're going to get your offer accepted?
Lower.
Yeah, not, right? They're probably going to have offers above $250 because it's worth more than that. So, again, just to kind of condense this all down, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what I want you to know is, when we're looking at a property and you decide that that's the house you want to write an offer on, the list price is not necessarily market value. So, before we write an offer, we're going to pull comparables to see what the market value is compared to the list price. Does this make sense? Okay. So let's talk about earnest money. So what is earnest money? Again, there's definitely some verbiage in here for you. And guys, like, it's not a problem if you're new or newer and you're having a consultation, like, have this script out and go ahead and just read it. Like, there's really no shame in that. In fact, it's a sign of intelligence. Like, hey, let me read you like a little blurb about what this is about. Because they should probably know that you're new or newer anyways. Like, that's full disclosure, right? Okay. So earnest money, this is a good faith deposit held by the third-party title escrow company. This amount will be applied towards your total settlement costs. So if you have a down payment for your loan, don't worry. This earnest money is not in addition to, it's part of the total amount of money you're going to need to bring to closing anyways. Now, if they got a down payment assistance program, or their VA or something of that nature, and they may get that money back. So it might be initial investment. But typically, people are going FHA or conventional, they got down payment, closing costs. This earnest money is going to be applied towards that total amount that they need to bring to closing. Okay? So, the earnest money is basically seller's liquidated damages if you materially breach the contract. Which basically means we're under contract and you just up and change your mind, you no longer want to buy the house a couple days before close of escrow, and the seller's had the property off the market for you, and you're just canceling, that's their liquidated damages for their time and energy and efforts to take the property off the market. So, we're going to explain and discuss timeframes when you can get that money back versus just canceling for no reason at all. Okay? So the money may be subject to refund if you cancel the contract during normal periods of the contract where you're allowed to cancel versus just changing your mind. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. There's a spot in the contract, or I strongly suggest you talk a little bit about personal property versus fixtures. So in the kitchen, I don't know why this is still such a thing, but most buyers don't understand what's a fixture versus personal property. So in the kitchen, a built-in microwave, fixture. Stove, fixture. Oven, fixture. So the only personal property in the kitchen is the refrigerator, right? And that'll need to be identified in the contract. So if we're looking at a house, got a nice stainless steel appliance package with a beautiful fridge, if you want that, we need to ask for it, okay? As well as other things throughout the house. Ceiling fans, window coverings, these are all considered fixtures. Artwork and things of that nature, personal property. So just make sure you have a conversation with them that basically fixture is something that's like attached and it's not meant to be moved. That would be a fixture and it stays with the property. Okay? So if they see a nice vintage car in the garage and they want that as part of the deal, that's not a fixture. We'd have to write that in there. All personal property has to be specifically identified in the contract. So as we're looking at houses, if you see something you want that's part of the negotiation, let me know so we can put it in the contract. Okay? And they say yes. And then they initial here that we had that conversation. So when you write the offer and it gets accepted, and you're like, hey, that's coming with the house, right? You're like, no, that's personal property. It's a bed. Oh, but we wanted that. Well, as I said in our consultation, personal property, we need to specifically identify in the contract. And you didn't tell me that. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it seems so simple and easy to overlook, but these are important details. Because if you don't address these things, they can come to bite you. Okay. Let's talk about close of escrow date. So, before you write an offer, and let your clients know, it's Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, before we write an offer, I'm going to reach out to the listing agent and ask them some questions. Like, what is the seller looking for? What's the seller's time frame? When do they want to be out of the house? And I'm going to compare that information with you compared to what your goals are. Because if we want a longer closing, because let's say they're in a rental, and we want to drag this out as long as possible so you're not paying a mortgage and rent, yet the seller needs to be out immediately, we just need to know that might be a sticking point. And we want to go into the negotiation with that. So, close of escrow date is usually 30 to 45 days. Now, you definitely want to have a conversation with that borrower's lender, if it's not your lender, on what is their average turn time. Because if you just put in 30 days as a close of escrow date in the contract, again, the borrower's using their own lender, not someone you have a relationship with, and that lender needs 45 days to close, might you have a problem?
Yep.
Yeah. So do you want to know that when you write the offer, or 30 days into your escrow? You want to know that right up front, because that can cause some major conflict with the seller, because they don't have to extend the closing. That would be a problem. Okay. Loan contingency. This is a big one. A lot of borrowers, when they're putting up earnest money, which, by the way, just to kind of backtrack a little bit, most buyers are going to ask you, well, how much earnest money is acceptable. And to that, I say at least 1%. If you want to be a strong borrower and write a great offer, it's not just about what price you're offering, it's terms too. Earnest money is a term. So if it's a $250,000 house, $2,500 earnest money, that's pretty substantial. And that shows good faith from the borrower to the seller. Now you can go as little as $500, but how does that look in the seller's eyes of how earnest the borrower really is? Right? So the more earnest money, the better it looks for the borrower to the seller. Okay? So borrowers want to know, how could I lose my earnest money? Because I don't want to, right? Like nobody wants to lose $2,500 or more. So let's talk a little about your loan contingency. If at any point through this process you no longer qualify for the loan, there's an unfulfilled loan contingency in the contract, which states we can cancel the contract and all earnest money shall be refunded to you. So if we get 3 days before close of escrow, and God forbid, you get fired, laid off, whatever, now you no longer have the income, and you don't want to buy the house, you're not going to qualify for the loan. We can cancel the contract and get your earnest money back. Okay? So that's one protection you have there. Let's talk about appraisal contingency. So we're under contract, let's say $250,000. Lender orders the appraisal comes back, the house only appraised for $240,000. We got a couple options. One is the seller can reduce the price from the $250,000 contract price to appraised value at $240,000. Option number two, you bring $10,000 to the table to make the difference between appraised value and contract price. Or three, we just kind of renegotiate some things. But you can cancel the contract too. So, get the appraisal, it comes in low, you're not satisfied with that, we can cancel the contract immediately, you get all of your earnest money back. Now keep in mind, they already paid for inspection and appraisal. So they're already probably about $1,000 into this thing. Closing cost concessions. This is huge. So I think what a lot of consumers out there do not understand about structuring an offer, and sadly enough in our industry a lot of agents don't understand, is closing costs. So for example, borrowers buying a house, let's use easy math here, $200,000. They need 3% concessions for their closing costs. So they ask the seller for it. 3% of $200,000, $6,000, right? Okay. So buyer says, okay, agent, I want you to write an offer for me for $200,000, and we're going to ask for 3%. In the buyer's mind, they think they're offering full price. But are they? No. What are they really offering? $194,000.
Yeah.
So you need to point that out to them so now they have perspective and awareness of their offer. Because what you don't want to do is write a full price offer, ask for 3%, then the seller gets another offer for $200,000, no closing cost concessions, and they go, why didn't they select our offer? Well, because you offered $6,000 less than what the seller was asking for. So, I'm not saying don't ask for closing costs. What I am saying is, make sure the borrower understands, however much closing costs you're asking for, you must subtract that from your offer price, so the seller can see what the net offer amount is. Now, if the property's priced really well, and the seller won't take less than list price, but your buyer must have closing cost concessions, that's okay. We can add that amount on top. So, here's how you do that. So we will use the board. This is really super important. Most people, if the house is $200,000, 3% is $6,000, right? Okay, so in order to add the closing costs on top, you would not add $6,000. Because now at 206, you still need 3%, which would be now more than $6,000. So here's how you do it. You take what percentage you need, let's say it's 3%, minus 100. That would give us 97. So we're going to take 200,000 times 0.97, and that's going to give us the number we need. It's going to come out to 206 and some change. But now the seller is actually going to net 200,000, and the seller can pay for their closing costs by adding it on top. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, that
Review
makes
that.
sense.
Okay.
Just as long as we can appraise at the new price, right?
Exactly, yeah. So again, let's say they needed 4%. Take 4 minus 100, that'd be 0.96. 200,000 times 0.96. That's going to tell you your contract price to add that amount of closing costs on top of the offer price, so you can net the seller what they're asking for. That's how to do the math. Okay? So, and if you show this to the borrowers, your buyers, this is how it works, they're going to understand, oh, I need 3%. And I want the seller to pay for it. So I'm going to add it on top. Okay? Just to make sure your math is clean and professional. Okay, CCRs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it can be important. Some people, when they're buying in an HOA, need to know what the rules are because they have a work truck or a certain amount of pets and things of this nature. So you want to let them know, as soon as you receive those CCRs, covenants, constraints, restrictions, from the HOA, you're going to get them in the mail. You've got 5 days to review that and disapprove of any rules. So if it says no work trucks in the driveway and you've got a work truck that you must park in front of your house, we need to cancel this contract and get your earnest money back. Okay? So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, make sure you read that. Again, that's why it's on the checklist, and that's why you have them initial it, so you can prove you had the conversation. Okay. SPUDs, Seller's Property Disclosure Statement. So we're going to get this form either at time of contract or within 3 days following that. And that's a disclosure statement from the seller on everything that they know about the property. If we review those SPUDs, that disclosure, and there's something we disapprove of, we can cancel the contract immediately and get your earnest money back. I'm going to also ensure that we have that disclosure before you pay the money to have a home inspection. Because if we find something on the disclosure that causes you to want to cancel, there's no sense in paying for an inspection. Does that make sense? You're like, oh yeah, so you're watching their back. You're representing them. Okay. In addition, if there is something on the SPUDs, like something that went wrong, a water leak, and it was repaired, we want to make sure that we inform the home inspector of that situation so they can pay extra close attention to it. Or we might need to hire a professional in that regard, whatever the situation was that was disclosed, to specifically inspect that. Maybe it was a slab crack. Maybe it was something with the pool equipment that the home inspector is not well versed in to inspect themselves. Maybe the HVAC system, who knows? So with that disclosure statement, we can bring out professionals to inspect whatever might be material to the buyer. Okay? Lead-based paint, again, that's only going to apply for properties built before 1978, but nonetheless, we want to review that disclosure and see if they have any records or knowledge of lead-based paint in the property, especially if the borrower has kids. I usually tell them to make sure you feed your kids, don't let them chew on the windowsills, those kinds of things. It's supposed to be funny. It's not really. A little bit, just a little, huh? Okay, cool. All right. Inspections. So let's talk about that. Again, we're going to want to get a copy of the SPUDs and the insurance claims history report before we show up for the home inspection. Now, I recommend you do the home inspection as soon as possible once you get a contract acceptance, because the problem with, we have standard 10 days, right? So if you wait until day 8 to do a home inspection, and based on the home inspection, the home inspector says, hey, you really need to get a professional for this out here to come investigate. You don't have a lot of time to book somebody, which means you might need an extension on your inspection period. But the seller's not required to give you one. So as soon as you get a contract accepted, get the home inspector out there as quick as possible so you have more time to do further investigations as needed. Because you only get one shot to submit your Benzer, right? Okay. Let them know approximately how much that home inspection is going to cost. So if you don't have a home inspector, get one and ask them ballpark what are their fees for an average style home. And do they charge extra for additional square footage, or year built, or pools, or things of that nature. Make sure you have that information on hand so you can properly educate your borrower. Especially if they're a first-time borrower and they don't have a lot of cash. Like if they're cash sensitive, you might want to inform them now what this is going to cost to make sure they even have the funds. Okay? So again, you be professional, be diligent, make sure you're disclosing everything up front so that they're well prepared. The more prepared they are, the more emotionally invested they are in this process, and it can be fun for them. Like getting blindsided by, oh, we need $400 for a home inspection? We didn't know that. That's not going to go over too well, right? Okay. So let's talk about the Benzer. So we did a home inspection, came back relatively clean. There's some items. Let's say a home inspector said a light didn't work. It could be an electrical problem, but it could be a light bulb. That's not something we want to ask the seller to fix. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, once we're done with our home inspection, we're going to get a color report with pictures of everything that's wrong with the house. We do have an opportunity to do one of two things. One is, we can cancel the contract based on the inspection. Let's say there's just too many things wrong. They found a list of 65 things, it seems like the house is falling apart, and you want to cancel, no problem. You cancel immediately, you get your full earnest money back refunded. Or we can ask the seller to fix things. But here's what I want to let you know. To go to the seller and ask them to fix things is not a wish list. This is an opportunity to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we still want to buy your house, but if you're not willing to fix these items, we're canceling. So this is like a put up and shut up or do or die situation. This is not your Christmas list of, hey, could you fix all these little cosmetic things? Don't do that. Because what can happen is the seller goes, wow, all of this is strictly cosmetic. And I gave you a good deal in your negotiations, I'm not fixing anything. You could really offend or upset a seller by giving them a wish list of repairs. Versus, out of the 12 things the home inspector found, you're asking for 2. Because the AC's not working properly and the hot water heater's not working. Hey, if you don't fix this, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're not buying your house. Now, do you have more negotiation leverage? Yeah. So ask for what's absolutely necessary, not a wish list. You'll get more response from the seller that way. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about home warranty. Hopefully you were able to slip that in the contract that the seller's going to buy one for the buyer, but that doesn't always happen, right? Again, property's underpriced, you got it at a good deal, and ask for closing cost concessions on top of that. Like, don't get too greedy. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I recommend a home warranty, especially because this house is not brand new. Your AC could go out tomorrow, and that's several $1,000s. Yes? A home warranty policy, depending upon the company, and depending upon the type of coverage, can be anywhere from like $350 to $750. It lasts for 1 year. This is not an insurance policy. It's just a home warranty. Meaning if something breaks due to normal wear and tear, they may come out and they'll fix it or replace it for your service fee call. So I would have some brochures, a couple different home warranty companies. What are their fees for the policy itself, plus a service call. So just because a homeowner calls, they don't come out for free. There's a cost associated with that. Usually about 65 bucks. So make sure you have a couple pamphlets from your preferred partner for home warranty with what those plans are, how much they cost. You don't need to get into great detail about all the plans. In fact, you don't even need to read all the fine print about the plans on what they cover and what they don't. That's up to the buyer to investigate. Okay? So it's not that you want to be a home warranty expert, but you want to at least have the information to provide them. Okay. So let's talk about a final walkthrough. Approximately 3 to 5 days before close of escrow, you and I are going to go back to the property and we're going to inspect 2 things. One, whatever repairs we negotiated, that they're actually complete. And I'm going to get pictures and receipts of that work that's been completed, and then we're going to go to the property and actually put our eyes on it and make sure it was done. Okay? The other thing about final walkthrough is if the property is vacant, we want to go back and make sure that no new damage has occurred. Like, you'd be surprised. Property's vacant, it's the day before close of escrow, and a toilet hose bursts, and now there's water all over the property. Do you want to get that remediated before you close escrow?
Yeah.
I would, right? So you wouldn't be able to know that unless you do a final walkthrough. Honestly, I prefer to go to the property like the day before close of escrow, just to make sure everything is good. You can go back 3 to 5 days before, but I'd go back again, just to be solid. Like, things happen. And you close escrow and there's water all over the place, like, your buyer's going to be quite upset. Okay, so just be diligent. Okay, HOA addendum. Again, you're going to review that at time of contract with your borrower to see what the fees are and so forth. And again, if they have specific needs, like let's say it's a townhome and your client has 4 cats or 3 dogs and they're big dogs, you're going to want to call that HOA before you even write an offer and find out what's in their CCRs about that situation. Otherwise, what could happen is you can accept a contract, you and your buyer, on the property. They pay for an inspection. They pay for an appraisal, and then, for whatever reason, after all that, they finally get the CCRs that say only 3 pets allowed, dogs under 25 pounds, yet they have a German Shepherd. So either they need to cancel the contract or get rid of the dog. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to want to cancel the contract. But they've already spent money on inspection and appraisal. See what I'm saying? Like you could have saved your client $1,000. Do you think they're going to be really happy with you if you didn't bring this up ahead of time? No. And you would have found out in the very beginning by asking them questions. You know you're looking at townhomes. Townhomes have restrictions, some of them. So that's why inspecting what they say they want is important. Okay. Make sure you have them sign a market conditions advisory. I mean, that's part of our process at Libertas. Some brokerages don't require that form. We do. Very simply, because the market is cyclical. Values go up, values go down. You buy the house today, tomorrow, the market could crash. We don't know. It's just an advisory. Okay, so make sure that's part of your spiel. Let's talk a little bit about agency. This is really important. Most importantly about agency is dual agency, right? So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, like what you need to know is the broker represents you. I'm a representation of the broker. So as I'm representing you looking at houses, if we find a house that you like, that you want to write an offer on, that's also listed with my company, we're going to have what we call dual agency. Because the broker is representing both the seller and the borrower. In the event that that happens, there's a separate form we'll need to fill out. It's called a consent and limited representation, which basically states that since I'm representing you through the broker, I'm not allowed to disclose to the listing agent or the seller the price you're willing to pay for their property. That's confidential information, and that cannot be broken. Now, on the other end of that, since the broker is also representing you and the seller, the listing agent and the seller will not disclose to me the amount that they're willing to accept from you. Because if that's a number that's lower than their list price, would that be confidential information to the seller? Yes, because they want to get as much money as possible, right? And you want to offer the least amount possible. So there's confidentiality in what we can disclose to each other and what we cannot. So I'm not able to disclose to the other party what you're willing to pay. They're not able to disclose to me what they're willing to accept. Does that make sense? Okay. So you want to have that conversation up front. Because you don't have that conversation, and then you get to the point where in the contract, you're like, oh, by the way, this property is listed with my brokerage, which means, and then you get into that spiel, they're like, whoa, a lot of people will be scared and apprehensive to move forward now knowing this information. And you could have prevented the whole thing by having a conversation up front during the buyer consultation. So that way you go drive up to the next house to go view, right? And they see Libertas sign, they're like, oh, hey, it's listed with your company. Yep, it is. I hope you like it. And don't forget that conversation we had about dual agency, right? You remember? Great. Okay? All right. Buyer-broker agreement. This must be part of your process. It must. Here's why. Well, first let me explain to you why agents don't want to use a buyer-broker agreement. A buyer-broker agreement really is an employment agreement. It's saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you are hiring me exclusively to represent you in your home purchase. And here's my compensation. So most agents don't want to say that because they're afraid the buyer's going to go, well, I don't want to pay you. I don't want to work with you exclusively. I want to just buy a house, whoever happens to show it to me. If they're not willing to hire you exclusively, are you willing to go show them houses on the weekends or evenings? The answer would be, hell no. Right?
Right.
Okay, so here's how this relationship's going to work based on this employment agreement. You're going to hire me exclusively. I'd smile about that, by the way. Tell your face this is happy for them, right? Okay? So, here's how I get paid. You see this line right here, and it's blank line for you to fill in with your clients. Amount of compensation. You can write in there, as offered by listing broker. That's your compensation. Whatever the listing broker is offering me, that's my pay. Can you do that? Yeah. You can say yes. It's recording.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. All right. So, here's how this relationship's going to work. What this means is since you're hiring me exclusively to represent you, that means you will not, shall not, go to a new home build community without me. Like, drive that home. Do not go to a new build community without me. If you do, they will not pay me, which means you will pay me. Do you want to pay me out of your pocket 3%? You're looking at $300,000, that's $9,000. They will pay me if you take me with you. So if you are out driving around on Saturday and you're just doing some errands and you happen to see a new build community and you're just itching and dying to stop in, call me. I might be available. I might not be. But yet if you go there, I can call the agent that's on hand at that time, call them, and I might be able to register you over the phone or online right from my phone. And then you'll be free to go in. Does that sound fair? Of course they're going to agree to that. But if you never had the conversation, like guys, I cannot tell you, I've lost track how many agents have lost deals after showing a bunch of houses because their clients went on a weekend to go check out a new build and thought nothing of it. Like, what's the big deal? But it says right on their door, before the buyer walks into the new build community, your agent must be present on your first visit to this community. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you go through and you look at the models and you register, I'm out of the picture and you owe me a commission. All you need to do is call me. This makes sense, like this isn't difficult. So, I can honestly tell you, in 16 years, I've had one person, that's it, one person, say no to signing a buyer-broker agreement. This was back just before the boom, so about late 2004. That's how long it's been since someone denied signing a buyer-broker agreement. And the reason he would not sign it is because he said, I like having multiple agents work for me at the same time. Is that valuable information for you to know?
Yeah.
Why?
Don't waste your time.
Yeah, you don't want to work with them. So do you want to find that out during your consultation or after you showed them a bunch of houses? Up front. Okay, so again, this is just standard of practice, best practices to save you time and be professional. Okay? All right, so buyer broker agreement. Now here's the other thing. Maybe they'll say, well, I don't want to be tied in for a year in your agreement. You can make that time frame whatever you want it to be. If they're a little apprehensive and they don't know if you're really going to align with them yet, you can make that puppy for just today. So I'll tell you what, Mr. and Ms. Buyer, why don't we just test out this relationship? We're going to go look at some houses today. We'll make this agreement just for today. And at the end of the day, if we decide we still want to work together, we'll do another one for 30 days. Is that an option? Yeah, like you can do whatever you want here. So whatever their objection is, you can overcome it. The compensation, the seller's going to pay me, right? The listing broker, technically, not the seller. The listing broker's taking the full commission and dispersing to a cooperating broker. So you don't need to worry about that. Unless you go buy a house without me, because you hired me to represent you. Okay? Same thing with open houses. If you go to an open house, here's some of my business cards. When you walk in the open house, let that agent know you're already working with an agent. Hand them my card. They are supposed to leave you alone. Otherwise, they're impeding on our agency relationship. Does that make sense? So this is your get out of jail free card, so you can walk through open houses without them bothering you. Make sense? Okay. So, with signing that buyer broker, with having that conversation, you should no longer be losing buyers. So long as you're doing your job and actually showing them properties and walking them through the process, right? But you'll never lose them to a new build community or an open house again after having that conversation. Make sense? Okay. Market trend analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, like this is so important. We use the market trend analysis in listing presentations, right? Why?
Show the seller what's going on in their market.
Yeah, like comparables are one part of the story. Active show competition, pending show what buyers are writing offers on, and closed show historical data of where sales have been, right? But that's part of the picture. The other part of the picture in pricing a property properly is supply and demand. So if supply and demand is out of balance, shifting to the seller's market, meaning there's a lot of demand and low inventory, that's a seller's market, you're going to want to know how then the home is going to compare with the actives for sale. If it's out of balance and there's high demand, low inventory, you can price your property a little higher than the comps. If the opposite's true, if there's a lot of inventory but not a lot of demand, that means prices are going to go down. So you'd want to price yourself below the comps, right? So that's why we need a market trend analysis in pricing a property for a seller, correct? Okay, why do you want a market trend analysis for a buyer? This is good.
So that they know what to offer on the home when they decide on the home they want.
Thank you. Because how frustrating is it? You do a buyer consultation, you get them pre-qualified, you show them houses, boom, right off the bat, they find one they love. It's Priced at 250, they're like, we want to start at 220. And then like your whole world falls apart, right? Like, damn it, it's never going to fly. So during the buyer consultation, let's say right now we're in Arrowhead, right? Let's say they're going to look in Arrowhead Ranch. I'd pull a market trend analysis of Arrowhead Ranch. If it's showing a strong seller's market, I want them to know that. So as we're looking at houses, they find the one they fall in love with, I can remind them, hey, remember the market trend analysis? It's a strong seller's market right now. We're going to need to be competitive with our offer. So let's go back to the office and pull some comparables and see what the market value is of this property so we can make an informed offer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a market trend analysis, in my opinion, is vital if you're representing buyers. That way they can make good offers. Unless you want to go show houses, write an offer, and not get accepted. Go show more houses, write an offer, not get accepted, because they're writing lowball offers. Like you're just burning through your time. You can educate them so they make better informed decisions, which means you and the buyer get to the closing table faster. Be professional. Make sense? And that video is on the internet and YouTube as well, market trend analysis. Vital part of buyer representation. Okay, last piece of this is secure financing. It's the bottom one. Let's say that the borrower playing phone tag with the loan officer, they did not get their pre-qual before the buyer consultation. No problem. I know really I said like cancel the appointment, that's usually what I do. But in certain circumstances, if you make an exception to still have the buyer consultation and they don't have the pre-qual yet, no problem. Go through the consultation process and then pick up your cell phone and get the lender on the phone. You got your borrower right there. Now we can get this handled now. Great, get that handled. The loan officer is going to send you the pre-qual. Let's pull up some properties on the MLS. Now we can go look. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, guys, here's your guideline to make sure that you're not missing any of your talking points, your educational pieces. And there's a script that goes along with each and every single one of these. It's right there for you. So print this, read through it, familiarize yourself with it, and especially just before you go into buyer consultation. You're going to seem much more confident in what you're talking about and what you want to communicate. Okay? So these are just tools and resources to help you up your game. So, any questions?
No.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, what's the average like cost for closing costs, even between the buyer and the seller, like the percentage-wise?
So for the buyer, it really depends on the price point. So if it's basically 250 and below, you're probably looking at about 3%, 2.5% to 3%. If you go up in price from there, the percentage is smaller. And here's why. If you take, well, let's just say a $200,000 house, and property taxes are $1,500, right? Part of their closing cost is going to be some property taxes up front, insurance, and these kinds of things, impounds, right? Okay, well, if the property's $450,000 and the taxes are $2,000 a year, that $500 difference is a smaller percentage at $450,000 than it is at $200,000. Does that make sense? I mean, because here that's almost 1%, whereas here that's 0.5%, less than 0.5%. So it really depends on the price point and the lender. We're seeing some mortgage brokers come back into the picture now, which have been gone for a while. A lot of mortgage brokers aren't charging a lot of fees because they get paid directly from the lender. So their closing costs are less. So I'd love to have a nice, cute answer for you, but the truth of the matter is it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the price point and it depends on the lender. Now what you can do is you can download apps on your phone for the title companies on what their standard closing costs are going to be for title and escrow fees. So title policy, escrow fee, recon, all those kinds of things. Okay? And then that's a great question to ask your lender is, hey, do they need closing costs? And if they do, how much are we talking at their price point? So when you get that information from the lender, I like to ask how much do they need, not percentage. Because the borrower has to ask for closing costs. I don't want to ask for $1 more than I have to. Because if the house they really desire is priced really well, I don't want to ask for 3% if we only need 2.25%. You know what I mean? Like it's that much more negotiating I have to go through, especially if they have multiple offers. So great question, and ask your loan officer and escrow officer what the fees are going to be on that purchase price amount so you can get an exact dollar figure and ask the seller only for that, not more than you need. Now, if it's a buyer's market and the sellers are just dying to get an offer, go crazy. Ask for 3.5% or 4%. You could use that difference to buy down the interest rate, to get them a 2-year home warranty policy, to pay for all kinds of prepaids, like go crazy. But if it's a seller's market and you need to be competitive with your offer, only ask for what you need. Good question. Any other questions? No? Okay.